Hi, and thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about modifications for the first trimester. As I said in our video about the first trimester, you really don't need to modify, but some people want to start to prepare themselves for learning how to practice in their new pregnant body. Practitioners who are newly pregnant might feel like they're showing when maybe they're not. Perhaps they're gassy, or maybe they have indigestion or an upset stomach. So the practice might look a little bit different in the first trimester, even though there's not a physical need to modify the practice. We're going to show you a few ways to modify the practice that will help your yoga practitioners to ease into their new pregnant body with tools to take with them throughout the entire 3 trimesters. Now you see I've got some blocks at the top of my mat. These are going to be key all throughout pregnancy to provide stability and to make space. So we'll start at the top of the mat. Now you'll notice I don't look pregnant because I'm in my first trimester. Being in your first trimester, typically you don't look pregnant. You might look a little bloated. And that's because the uterus is still in the pelvis. So I can technically do everything I was doing before without worrying about it doing any harm to my pregnancy at all. Now, I am going to want to start to get ready for the experience of having to modify my practice when I run out of space. As my abdomen expands, I'm going to lose space I once had, and I'm going to need tools to modify. So this is an excellent way to get your students ready for that transition. The first thing we're going to look at is a forward fold. When our students who are expecting have their baby, they're going to be bending over a lot, and many of us bend over with straight knees. The very first thing that we want to teach them to modify is their forward folds. So standing at the top of the mat, we're going to say bend your knees, fold forward from the hips. Place your hands on blocks. Now, when I do this, I am providing a little bit more stability to my practice. I've got blocks underneath me so that if my joints are open or loose, I don't really have to worry about falling over. And you can see my knees are bent. When I inhale and find half lift, I'm going to keep that bend in my knees. And then I'm going to exhale and I'm going to fold forward over the thighs. Let the head hang. Now, for some expectant mothers, even letting the head come below the heart can cause them to feel lightheaded. So if they need to keep their arms straight and keep their head in line with their heart, that's perfectly fine. From here, we're going to step back into a plank posture. So setting the blocks to the top of the mat, stepping back to plank. Now again, I can teach them to drop to their knees if they are newer to the practice. If they've been practicing vinyasa for a long time, they can go ahead and keep the knees lifted, and they can take chaturanga like they would any other time, and even upward facing dog. Down to downward facing dog. Now, as they begin to lose that space, once the abdomen starts to enlarge, it's going to be harder for them to step through to the top of their mat. So, for some practitioners who have easily brought their leg through in between their hands, this might become challenging. So you might cue something to the effect of inhale, raise the right leg. Exhale, bring the right leg out and to the top of the mat. When we bring the right leg out to the top of the mat like this, we are making space. Then we have the blocks here. We lower the knee and bring the hands to the blocks, again to make space, and we can take half splits. These blocks come in handy when we're trying to create space and modify for our changing body. When ready, we bend into the knee and step the back foot to meet the right. And again, come into that forward fold with the knees bent. Release, inhale all the way up. And exhale, hands through heart center. Now, most of our practice is focused on flexion in the hips. So we don't really have to worry a whole lot about the abdomen. But if we go into a back bending practice, for example, we have the potential, especially later in pregnancy, to disrupt the rectus abdominis. When the rectus abdominis separate, we can have a situation that is common in pregnancy called diastasis. Diastasis is when the abdominal muscles separate and there is a laxity in the abdominal muscles. And typically this is the superficial rectus abdominis, the one that you would see if you were, let's say, building a six-pack. And so we want to avoid deep back bends in late pregnancy. In early pregnancy, it's fine, and it's not going to do any harm or damage. As you start to move through your pregnancy, or as your students start to progress through their pregnancy, you will notice that you will need to modify for stability. Stability is going to be the number one thing that we're going to want to modify for because of the relaxin and the tendency for the joints to be lax and loose. So when we modify for stability, we might use a block, for example. Placing the block on its lowest height. If I'm instructing, let's say, eagle posture, Garudasana, I might bend the knees and I might cross the right leg over the left using the block for stability. Now I'm going to cactus the arms and bring the right arm underneath. Now this might be uncomfortable if my breasts are swollen or if I'm experiencing tenderness. So this might be another option, or we might just cactus the arms. This might be a great option too. Sometimes the breasts can be so tender in the first trimester that anything touching them is unbearable. So giving your students options when you're working with them in postures that might bind the chest will help them to have more ease in their practice. As your students progress through their pregnancy, they will lose space in the abdomen. They won't be able to twist like they used to. For example, if I was going to cue a closed twist for my general population students, I would put them in chair pose, and I would bring their hands through heart center and have them twist with the right elbow to the opposite left thigh. But that's not possible when we are expecting, especially once we hit the second and third trimester. Twisting is not dangerous. It's just not comfortable. So we can give our students options. Coming into a chair pose, I cue a open or a closed twist, and my expectant mothers come in for an open twist. Now if the belly needs to go with the arms, it's okay, it can, or we can try to maintain pelvic equanimity, but that is not going to cause injury. It actually gives your body space to do what it needs to do. Standing balancing postures can be a challenge when you are expecting, especially if you feel laxity in the joints right away. Let's look at a few options for standing balancing postures. When we're working with our students and standing balancing postures, especially in a yoga studio, we might not have chairs around to just grab and bring into practice, but we probably have a wall. So you can take and position your expectant mothers against a wall and use the wall to help them to balance in postures like Warrior 3. Let's take a look at what that would look like. So coming into a warrior posture, close to the wall, facing the wall, and then now I'm going to come in for Warrior 3, leaning my hands forward first, and then standing into my standing leg. As you can see, the wall is providing me with support, and when I'm ready, I can come to a stand and release the wall. When I have expectant mothers in my class and I want to sequence something like crescent lunge, I always give them the option to drop their knee. Let's take a look at what that would look like from downward dog. Inhale, right leg raising up. And then exhale, swing the right leg to the front of the mat and lower the knee. If you'd like, you can come up into crescent lunge or stay in Anjaneyasana, low lunge. Stacking the knee over the ankle, Bring a block to your right hand and then inhale, reach up. So now my right hand is touching the block and I have a little bit more stability. I'm a little bit more grounded. Now from here I can stay here. If the rest of the class is taking a closed twist, I can always take an open twist. Or if we're taking a side bend, I can always reach up and over using the block for a little bit of stability here. Again, the blocks can be useful for half splits, making space. And as I progress through the second and third trimester, I can then use the blocks under my hands to come back through, taking vinyasa and moving back to downward facing dog. Many women prefer to stop taking vinyasa and just take cat-cow. That is totally okay. You can take cat-cow in lieu of vinyasa anytime, whether you're pregnant or not. Giving your students the permission to do so will give them autonomy and empower them in their practice. These are just a few of the ways that you can teach your students to start modifying their practice in the first trimester. Remember, modifications in the first trimester are not required. Students can continue to practice in whatever setting they're used to up until the third trimester. If a student is coming to yoga new because they have just found out that they are pregnant and they're looking for a practice to help them while they are going through their pregnancy, then they should probably start slow, working strength and avoiding flexibility. The most important thing to remember is that the relaxin in the body will cause the joints to be looser and will prevent stability in the body. Using things like blocks, a wall, straps, blankets, bolsters, or chairs to support the practice will help your students feel grounded and at ease.